Welcome to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society, whose mission is making connections through music with the intention of bringing peace. And here we are today, once again, in the worldwide headquarters of the Planetary Gig Society, in the high-tech studios. And I'm very happy to be able to talk today with Barry Warsaw, a friend and musician, and I think we're going to have a good conversation. Hey, Barry, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm excited.
Yeah, so wanted to ask a little bit about, well, first I'll say, we met each other through some gigs, and not that I was playing in the gigs, but sort of group music in a church and playing at friends, and somehow we stumbled upon talking about Victor Wooten's The Music Lesson book, and it was kind of all downhill from there. And so, I'm glad that you were able to take the time today to come over and talk a little bit. I'd like to just get a little. I don't quite know, where you're from, and if you're from the D.C. area, that sort of thing. But also, how did music come into your life? When did it come into your life? Did you take lessons as a kid? Did you just, pick up the harmonica and start wailing, or what happened? Did your parents play music? So are you from the D.C. area?
Yep, born and raised. Lived in Montgomery County almost my entire life.
Yeah, me too, basically.
So, yeah, townie, I think we call ourselves.
And did you when did you start playing music, and what instruments did you play?
So I started, my earliest recollection of playing an instrument was playing the snare drum in elementary school. I don't exactly remember what the situation was, but there was some kind of school band or something like that, and I played the snare drum. As it turns out, a drummer friend of mine, still has that snare drum.
Wow.
He's done a lot of work on it, but and I remember taking piano lessons growing up. And when I was 13, I got a classical guitar, and I started taking classical guitar lessons. And I liked it a lot. But it's really, classical guitars, I felt it was really difficult to play.
Yeah.
So that was at 13. And then 2 years later, my next door neighbor starts playing guitar in a rock band, right?
Ooh, pretty cool.
With other neighbor kids.
Yeah.
And of course, they need a bass player. So I actually asked my classical guitar teacher if he could teach me bass and if he could get me an electric bass. And I knew nothing about instruments, really knew nothing about it. And he got me this beautiful 1 month used Fender Jazz electric bass. And that was it. It was over. That was it. I knew that the bass was my instrument at that point. And I still have that bass, by the way.
Did your parents play music? Was there music in your house, or?
There was music in our house, but neither one of my parents played. Mm-hmm. I have very distinct memories of being a really little kid and listening, like totally enthralled with the records that my parents had. A lot of jazz, calypso. One of the records that I just devoured was Simon and Garfunkel, Sound of Silence. Just love that record a lot. So I listened to a lot of music. I found out, I think my dad had some interest when he was young in playing music, but certainly in our household, he never played. My mom didn't play, but my brother did play. He played piano and bassoon, actually.
Did he start playing music before you did?
No.
Older brother?
Younger brother.
Younger brother.
Yeah, I don't really remember. We probably took piano lessons together as kids. But then when I started playing bass, I actually also started playing stand-up in the DC Youth Orchestra. So it was just my last 2 years of high school, and my younger brother played bassoon, so we would go down together, and he'd play bassoon, and I'd play string bass in the TC Youth Orchestra.
Yeah, fun. So bass grabbed you. I mean, what do you think it is about the bass that did that? And, you know, people are always, you're reading these things, well, the bass player is the smartest guy in the band, and or the
Totally
drummer
true,
is the
of
smartest
course.
guy, you know. So, you know, what is the kind of the role that you see of the bass player, why it fits you, why you like it? You know, sometimes it seems a little boring. You guys are just, you're just doing that. But if you don't have it, the song doesn't really get held down, does it?
Yeah, I think that's true. For me, I mean, the bass has never been boring, you know, and you know, you mentioned Victor Wooten, and that's one of the things that I love about Victor, because he can play, he's got chops, you know, that can't be compared, you know, uncomparable, right? I mean, he can play anything. He blows you away when you see him. But the guy can lay down like a root fifth groove that is just the deepest groove. You know, it just is like, it's so funky and solid, and that is the kind of bass player that I like, because I really can't play all that tapping and, you know, all the really fancy stuff. But for me, the role of the bass is to marry the groove of the drummer, you know, the rhythm that the drummer's putting down with the melody and the harmony that's happening in the guitars and the vocals and all the solo instruments. So that's the role that I like as a bass player, is that really groovy, funky, hold it all together, you know, bottom end kind of thing. That's what does it for me. So I don't think for me, it's never boring, because I can play, you know, the simplest two-step, you know, in a country tune, and there's still so much there to explore and to get into and develop. It's always exciting for me. So.
In the first interview that I did, it was my guitar teacher, Eric Weinberg, and he said, listening is like 80 or 90% of music, and what you're describing there seems to explain that in a way. You got to be listening to what's going on too.
That's exactly right. And we can talk a little bit about Tai Chi later on, but the players that I love to play with are the ones who always have an open heart and always have open ears. And I think you're absolutely right. The listening is all of it. You know, I mean, you need a little bit you need the technique to be able to play what your ears are hearing, you know. But I think no matter what your technique is, if you're always cultivating your sensitivity and your listening, then that's the thing that you can always fall back on. And it's certainly true when you're playing a gig. I mean, you know, I've played with a couple of bands for at least 15 to 20 years, and we know each other very well. And even there, we'll sometimes hit a patch of black ice where, you know, we're kind of not sure where we're going, or, you know, we might forget a chord change or something happens. But because our ears are always open, then, you know, nobody but us is going to know. And actually that's kind of fun, because it's kind of fun to slip around on the ice a little bit and then, you know, catch yourself and lock back in with everybody. And you can see, you look around at the guitar player or at the drummer, and everybody's like, okay, where are we going? Where are we going with this? And then boom, it all just comes right back together, and that's a blast.
Well, it's so cool, you know, having started harmonica late in life and now working on guitar. Gosh, there's so much going on, and it's so hard to actually do what you're trying to do. I guess particularly as you're learning, if you're not as experienced of a player and all that, you're just worried about yourself and not completely screwing up, and it's kind of hard to listen sometimes. But
That's true. And I think that's where your own practice comes in, because you want to get to a comfortable place on your instrument where you don't have to think. And this is another tie-in with Tai Chi, because when you learn the Tai Chi form, you're really worried about where do my feet go? How do I, you know, what's my balance? Where do my hands go? How do I get from here to there? It's all the sort of mechanics of putting it all together. And then that's the thing you learn in the first year. And then you can take the rest of your life deepening your connection to that and listening to your own body and cultivating that sensitivity. And I think it's the same way with music. You got to get out of your thinking brain, you know.
Yeah, well, I'm still trying to get out of my thinking brain. But you mentioned Tai Chi now a couple times, and we did want to talk about that. Mm-hmm. So it might be good to have a little bit of if you could give us a little bit of an intro for the person who says, yeah, Tai Chi, those are the Chinese people who move around slowly.
That's right, yeah. Right.
So we know that. We got that. We're at that level. But kind of what is Tai Chi? What's the meaning? And then how it does relate to music, because it's I mean, music kind of relates to everything because it's vibrations. Yep. We're all vibrations. But I wouldn't have automatically said, gee, Tai Chi and music, So could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So Tai Chi is essentially a Chinese martial art. And it's related to Kung Fu. But it's really refined. And it's the nice thing about it is it's physically very approachable. So you can have kids. I went through and relearned the form from the beginning with my 9-year-old son, or when he was 9, and that was great. But we have people. I attended a seminar recently, and there was a 90-year-old guy there who had been doing it for a few years, and he was still moving his body. So unlike other martial arts, it's not that physically demanding, but what it does is it exercises your mind. So you're really using your mind to understand, to listen to your body. It's a hard concept to sort of describe, but I really feel like the listening and the sensitivity that you learn in Tai Chi, it's kind of like a form of moving meditation. It's the same muscles. We talk about listening to your body, listening to your partner when you're doing partner work. And it's exactly the same muscles that you use when you're listening to music or listening to your bandmates. Wow. It's exactly the same thing. So I see a lot of deep connections between the two practices, for sure.
This is not exactly related to music, but I do remember a conversation we had after the election of Donald Trump about kind of resisting something can make the thing stronger in a sense.
That's right. And
you talked about, it's better to kind of let it go by. And the word, I think you used the words surrender to the force or something like that.
Yes.
Which when I thought of it in context of Donald Trump, I thought, okay, this is not that great of a slogan for us to have. But what is that concept? Really?
Well, the primary concept, I think, is yielding to force.
Yielding.
And that doesn't mean giving up. And this is something that we understand. So the analogy that I use is like a fire hose, right? You want to relax your body. You want to relax to force when force is given to you. So, but the idea isn't that you want to collapse. So if you look at a fire hose that has nothing going through it and it's just jumbled on the ground, it's collapsed. There's no energy in it. Okay, but when you turn on the water and that pressure flows through it, then that's sort of the way that you use the energy that you develop in Tai Chi to express yourself in the world. And the only way you can do that is by relaxing. So the idea is that when force comes at you, a lot of martial arts meet force with force. If you think boxers, right? If someone's punching at you with force, you're trying to punch at them with force. And in Tai Chi, what you do is you take that force and you deflect it and you yield to it, but you allow the force to be used against itself. It's kind of like a ring in a bull's nose. A bull can be, 1,000 pounds, right? You're never going to push that bull over. But if you just grab that ring in its nose and you move it just slightly, that bull's going to go where you move it to. So the idea in Tai Chi is when the force comes at you, you're very sensitive to it because you're relaxed and you can feel where it's coming, and you can yield it and deflect it off into a harmless path. And then you can turn that energy back into the sort of the attacker. So that's one of the main concepts of Tai Chi.
And I suppose that's physical force, but also I'm guessing it's sort of a mental construct or spiritual way of dealing with things too.
It is. It is. We say the mind moves the chi, and the chi moves the body. So your mind, where you put your mind, that's where your energy goes. And where your energy goes, your body's going to react to that. So it's really a sense of cultivating your mindfulness so that you can feel your body. A lot of times we don't really feel where our bodies are, kinesthetically in the world. And that's sort of the philosophical side of Tai Chi. And you can get into that, but you can also get a lot out of it without getting into all that stuff as well. Yeah.
But I guess I'm beginning to see the perhaps a little bit of the connection to one of our other favorite topics, the music lesson by Victor Wooten. I just think it's the kind of the most wonderful, quirkiest novel about music, the most spiritual book about music that I've ever read.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. And there is one line in that book that there's a lot of lines, and I've read it about 4 times and try to go back to it. Listening to the audio book is great because he plays and narrates. But its intention is the key to everything. And what you're talking about in terms of the mind tells the chi and the body, that sort of sounds like intention to me.
I think that's right.
And so, but intention in music and then intention in other things. I've really become to believe, based on that book, that intention is the most important thing in my life. And it even kind of ties in with quantum physics, where the observer creates the object. And now we're going really crazy here, but I just laid out about 4 things. But what do you think about all that?
Yeah, so it's all connected, and I mean, we could talk for hours about this stuff because I've thought about it a lot, and I've done a lot of research on at least my own thinking about how all these things are connected.
Yeah, go for it.
I think you're absolutely right that intention is really the key here. So one of the things, after studying Tai Chi for a while and after reading Victor's book, which I agree, it's one of the best books on music that I've ever read. And I love the way it's sort of presented in this fictional context. So it's very engaging. But one of the things that I try to do, for example, if I'm playing a gig, I don't think about like what I'm trying to get out of the gig. I think about what the audience is trying to get out of this gig, right? They've come, they've paid money, probably. They're spending time with you. We're there to connect with them, to have a conversation with them, to trade something,
So your intention, in a way, is connection.
Exactly. I think that having that approach to playing music changes your relationship with it. And that comes back to what you're saying and what Victor's saying about the intention. Like if your intention is, I want to get a lot of accolades, or I want to bring the spotlight on me, or I'm just here to make some money, then I think that, and those things I'm not saying that those are necessarily bad. I've certainly done gigs for money that I probably wouldn't have done if it didn't pay so well. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But I don't think that those gigs are as rich as the ones where, as we talked about before coming here, playing a party with a bunch of friends just for the heck of it, just for the joy of playing, right? With people that you love and, sharing the musical stage with you and people that you love out in the audience, and everybody just chilling out and having a great time, making good music and listening to good music. I mean, like that, to me, is so good for the soul. And I think that's what bringing a positive, the positive intention to it really
Yeah.
brings.
Our friend Jamie Logie said something a long time ago. Said, "Man, I just want to play music with my friends."
Yeah.
And it's pretty powerful. So, intention in Tai Chi, there would be the connection would be an intention in Tai Chi as well.
Yeah, so there's this one, after you've studied for a little while, there's a two-person sort of partner work that you can do, and it's called push hands or sensing hands. And you're sort of doing this back and forth motion with a partner, and what you're trying to do is knock or push them off their center, off their balance. But you're trying to do that without any force. So one of the things that you are working on when you do that is to maintain a substantial connection, but not overt connection. So we try to keep 4 ounces of weight. 4 ounces is like the weight of a stick of butter.
Right.
But what that means is that we don't try to run away, because when you run away, that 4 ounces becomes 3 ounces or 2 ounces, and then you lose that connection. So you need to have a substantial connection to your partner in order to feel what they're doing, where they're going, where their center is, and where their intention is to push on you. But if that force builds up to 5 ounces or 6 ounces or 7 ounces, then you end up losing that sensitivity. You end up getting stuck because your body becomes tense. And tension is the thing that, pushes you off balance, basically, makes you lose your connection to your center. So it's always a game of providing a substantial connection, but not too much of a connection, not too much force. And that's a really profound thing, because we are taught, we learn, fear, right? Fear makes us tense. Yeah. Fear makes us run away. And so we have to let go of that. And so one of the things that we're doing is letting go of that fear of somebody coming at your center, right? And knowing I still have a little bit of place to move. I still have some I still have a connection to them. So I know what they're doing, and I can feel that. And that kind of connection and sensitivity is directly related to when you're playing with your musician friends,
Yeah, certainly, when I was playing harmonica, a lot of people, when they play, they get their shoulders all hunched up, and that just. But it is that looseness, kind of getting that fear part out, and just sort of going with it. And I'm even learning, as I've been talking with people more, about how listening does seem to be so important. And if your intention is to listen, and your intention is to connect, I mean, sure, there are times when I'm working on this little song or part, and I think, well, that's pretty cool. Everybody's gonna think I'm pretty cool when I play that, But that screws you up when you do that. When you say that to yourself. So I think that it's amazing the similarities that you're describing and drawing here between Tai Chi and music. From a bass player's perspective, I guess, boy, people in the audience, people listening to music, they can't help but tap their foot, and their body can't help but react to the music. Part of your job is to get that feeling into their body, isn't it?
Yep, absolutely. So that's another really interesting thing that I picked up after reading Victor's book. And I started to practice this, and it's profound. So, especially as a bass player, I'm totally happy in that role of not being in the spotlight. Like, I like being back there with the drummer, right? Mm-hmm. Where we can just totally lock in. Or the rhythm guitar player, where I can just feel that chunky right hand, getting those chords going, right? I mean, to me, that's the best. So one of the things I got out of Victor's book was to know how to use my attention to support what the other musicians are doing.
Oh, yeah.
So a great example is like when the vocals are happening. Let's say the lead singer is singing something, right? My attention is on their vocal line. I'm not really thinking about what I'm playing, and I don't have to think about all the other people in the band because I know that that's all going to be there, right? That's all going to just be locked in together. I'm still listening to everything, and I'm bringing everything in and processing that and synthesizing it. But what my attention is on the singer. Or when the guitar player takes a guitar solo, that's where my attention is. And so everything that I do, I feel like it's not something I'm consciously doing. Like I'm not saying, oh, I'm going to play this riff because they're playing that riff. But if I hear the guitar player play something or leave a space, then what I'm doing on bass is trying to make that work within the context of what all the other musicians are doing. So I might leave a space, and that might reinforce that space that the guitar player left in his solo, or the little triplet run that they did, or just that like holding a note and sustaining it and just like milking that sustain for everything it's worth. It's that I'm trying to support. I mean, I feel like my job at that point is to make the soloist, like to do everything that I can to make that spotlight on that soloist as bright as possible. And when you see everybody just like engaged and engrossed with that solo, my job is done. I mean, that's what I live for. So
Yeah, that's awesome. And I remember that part of the book now, how he talks about sort of getting the audience to put their attention on the guitar player doing the lead or whatever it might be. Well, here's something just sort of randomly about the book. He talks about zero quite a bit. And I always get the feeling, I mean, I think zero is about the space. You were talking about it. You mentioned space. It's like, space is so important. It's so amazing what it can do. You're playing along, and then I've started adding stop sort of into some of the songs that I do just because it sounds so cool. It really. So could you talk a little bit about, I don't know whether it's the concept of zero or space, or maybe that even has a tie-in with Tai Chi or quantum physics or something like that, to you, this zero space concept?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, I know it does, but so I'll relate a little bit to Tai Chi. Like in Tai Chi, so everybody's familiar with the yin yang symbol,
right?
Right, and it's a circle with a field of white and a black dot in the field of white, and then another field of black and a white dot in the field of black. So the thing about Tai Chi is that there's always this interplay between full and empty, or substantial and insubstantial. And so one of the things that we're doing while we're doing the form is we're moving our weight from one foot to the other foot, and in a cross pattern from one hand to the other pattern. So if our weight is full in our left foot, then our weight is full in our right hand. And the interchange between that is what makes all the energy happen. So in music, I mean, this is the truth, right? You can't have music without the rests. You need those rests. You need that space to make the music, to make the notes real. Without that, it's nothing. And I think that that's another thing that Victor has talked about, is really using the spaces, using the rests as part of the musical language. And he really talks about everything, right? And this is another lesson that I've gotten from this amazing book, which is you don't have to play notes to make a statement musically. It can be tone. It can be duration. It can be attack. Yep. It can be feel, articulation. All these things go into it. And, there's a big difference between playing like a root fifth legato, really like letting those notes hitting on the one and letting that note ring, to, a sharp attack on the 1 and 3. Those are so different things. And I think as a bass player, you can you can get caught up in trying to do all the fancy fretwork. And if you can do that, that's awesome. I can't really do that well. But what I can do is use all these other techniques to have a musical discussion, have a musical language, a conversation. And I really find that there's a lot of richness in those other aspects of performance. Yeah.
Here's another thought just came to me. He, in the book, this will be like a book review podcast or something, but he talks about the music always just being there already.
Yeah.
And you're just uncovering it. I try to think that way, and I think it helps. I don't know. It's a different perspective, but does that have some resonance or meaning, Tai Chi wise, or how you think about what do you think about when you play, or was that just a question that you didn't really want to answer?
I don't know, but it's a really interesting thing to discuss. Right, to talk about, because I feel like he's onto something there. I really do. And no, I was just gonna say, I notice this more when I try to write. Like when I just relax and try to tap into the music that's already there, then I find like writing can be effortless.
It just comes.
It just comes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
there.
It's there. And you're just hoping that whatever music genie comes in and just spends a little time and expresses itself through your hands and your voice, right? It's not always an easy thing to tap into, because we have so many other things that kind of get in our way. But I think when we relax and we get the thinking part of our brain out of the way and we open up our hearts and our ears, then that's when that kind of music as pervasive feeling takes over.
So one of the things that, in a sense, we're trying to do with the Planetary Gig Society is this intention of creating peace. In that context of what we were just discussing, the peace is already there.
Yeah.
And it is there. I mean, I've written a lot about this, and I think it's kind of fear that, takes away the peace. But one of the things I'm really trying to, help the conversation around what can musicians do? How can we use the power of music to build the community? He does talk in the book about, music is dying. There's that one chapter. Mm-hmm. And in the audio book, he's got a person talking, and you could sort of hear her dying as she's talking. It's really, what can we do, individually, collectively, to help bring that intention of doing good with music? I don't know. It's an open-ended question. It's kind of the $64 million one, as I've described, or 64,000. I get I'm not very good at numbers. Anyway, do you have a thought about that kind of concept at all?
Well, so I think that's what we're here for, right? Like, I might get a little philosophical at this point, but I really do believe that everything that we've talked about, the intention, the open heart, and the open ears, right? Not all of us are going to be world changers on a global scale, right? We can't all do that. Very few of us can do that. Most of us musicians are we call ourselves weekend warriors because we're just, out there playing gigs to a handful of people, having fun and spreading love, right? Our love of music and and all that. And I think that's good enough, because I think that, and this gets a little into like quantum mechanics, right?
Yeah.
Well, quantum mechanics is all about, we talk about entanglement and decoherence and all these things, right? Spooky connection at a distance, Einstein called it.
Yeah.
I won't get into too much of it, but I've read a lot of physics that basically says every point in space and every point in time is connected in some way. Yeah. from a physics standpoint.
I believe that.
Oh, I do too. And I think that all of us humans are connected. We're all connected. We just don't really realize that. So if you're playing music with your friends in the basement and you're having a great time and you're all smiling and laughing and, making each other happy, and the 10 friends that are in the audience watching you, and they're just eyes closed, big smiles on their face, you've already changed the world.
Yeah.
Right? You've already put more happiness and love and compassion and gratitude in the world than there was before that. That can't help but spread, right? And so I think that that's the way we bring what the peace and the love that the music gives us to other people and the world. I think that's how we spread it. It's either on a big scale, maybe you're playing a great gig and there's 500 people in the audience. That's your ability to connect to all those people. But it doesn't have to be that large. It can just be, you and your friends, or you sitting, making great music.
And music does have that effect. It's just so powerful, what I'm discovering through all the research. I mean, we feel it, but when you really see the research on music of the brain and how powerful it is, I mean, it is us. To your point about the connection, I've been sort of obsessed with writing about peace and how do we get there and yada yada, and I've come to think of that connection between everything really as love.
Yeah. And
the perception that we're separate is what kind of gives rise to fear in a way.
It is.
That makes us hold. We're not together. We're separate. So that's division. That's divisive. It just blows me away how deep all the quantum mechanics, quantum physics stuff and theories are. People say, what difference can that make in my life? Well, I kind of think it is our lives, and the issue is figuring out how we can do it. But it's fascinating the way that you talk about Tai Chi and with music, and your ideas about we just have to keep doing this, and I think keeping having the conversation about some of these things that, it's not just about going to a gig or listening to somebody in a bar. There are things you can kind of affirmatively do to call music into your life and into others. So, well, great conversation. Really appreciate it. I think we have, a lot more to talk about. We could do that another time, but Barry Warsaw, I really appreciate your being here, and a great conversation. Thanks you very much.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
You've been listening to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society. We talk with musicians and others about the power of music and how we can use music to help create a better world. Please check out our website, www.planetarygigs.org, for information about some of the organizations promoting music, resources about the power of music, including movies, books, articles, and new research on music and the brain. We do welcome your support. You can donate to the Planetary Gig Society, which is a 501c3 charitable organization, on the website. You can also get a free email signature block demonstrating your support for the Planetary Gig Society. Please also follow us on Facebook, Planetary Gig Society, Twitter, @Planetary Gigs, Instagram, Planetary Gigs, and submit your input, short videos, comments on the power of music in your life. Remember to use the hashtag Planetary Gigs when you do. So we hope you will check out our podcast again soon. Please subscribe if you'd like, and we look forward to more great conversations about the power of music. Planetary Gig Society, making connections through music with the intention of creating peace. That's what we're going to do.